So in this video, we're going to be talking about a guy who was a real legend in the sense of he fought for his fellow workers to get better rights and better conditions, better pay. And so we're talking today about Celso Mendoza, and shouts out to Angela Stuesse, who actually penned this article. And yeah, let's dig into this one. So Celso Mendoza spent, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name right as well, spent the last 2 decades of his life scratching out a meager living on the processing line at a chicken plant in Forest, Mississippi. Though he lived humbly, he was an honourable man, a worker leader respected by many in his community. May 2nd, he tragically passed away. He was 59 years old, and so a guy who's quite old, still working in manufacturing is something to behold, given how stressful it is working in food packing within America. In recent weeks, poultry and meat packing workers have sounded the alarm as processing plants across the country have experienced outbreaks of coronavirus. As workers begin to perish, advocates warn they are particularly high risk of contracting coronavirus. So these places are incredibly packed out with people with limited amount of PPE and look horrible. Generally not good places to work at. Packed closer together than birds they slaughter, amid the constant din of machinery, workers are forced into close range at every turn. Few have access to paid sick leave, which is a big problem in the US, and many cannot afford to miss work when they feel unwell. These practices ideal conditions for coronavirus to infect large numbers of people quickly, and many, like my friend Kelso, won't survive. And so look, the simple fact is they have, if they are feeling sick, there's a very low chance they'll stay at home purely because there's very limited sick pay, and they have to go into work because they're poor. And so what does that mean? That if you potentially have coronavirus, you're going to go into work regardless because you need to work. And so this is a problem similar to the UK within the care home sector as well. And so America is not alone in this, and that having facilities for sick pay make absolute sense, especially within a pandemic. To amplify the chorus of voices warning our nation of what is still to come for food chain workers, and in honor of a man I esteemed greatly, I want to share a small part of Celso Mendoza's story. So this is kind of his background. So profit over people, chicken plant workers are sick, but MS officials deny outbreaks. I don't know who MS are. Celso and I first met in 2002. Shortly after each of us first arrived in Mississippi, our friendship was unlikely but easy one. As a graduate student studying labour practices of the industry, I had a lot to learn from him. And so basically, as a guy who worked in the industry for a while, is very lucky, I guess, this person met with him purely because he's a guy who's very outspoken, and he would give the inside scoop essentially. And so he had migrated from Mexico to work in the chicken plant for $6 an hour. While it wasn't much, by sharing a house with a dozen others from his village, he was able to send money back home. It's a classic story of a person who moved to America for better pay in order to help his family who were living back where he's from, in this case Mexico, but we've seen this in multiple countries happen. I remember sitting on a sagging sofa in the living room of the house they rented out our first winter in Forest, bundled in coats, hats and gloves. We laughed together over our favourite telenovela, Pedro al Escamoso, enjoying the opportunity to unwind after a long day. And so they talk about how he lived with so many people in a house, 13 men in a house. How bad their living conditions were, with a tiny floor heater keeping the room warm. The pipes frozen for 3 days. The central heat wouldn't turn on, and so these people lived an incredibly hard life, to put it gently. And so yet the landlord responded in a timely manner. The landlord being an absolute idiot, not helping them out at all. The landlord obviously would know there's 13 men in a house as well. This is the life of many immigrant poultry workers throughout the US, earning far less than their fair wage, paying far beyond a fair price for their housing, barely scraping by year after year. And so we've seen that in the UK as well, where you have houses full of people who work for not a great salary in warehousing and other places like that, who ultimately send the money home, who live incredibly hard lives to fend the families, not just people from the EU as well as people from outside of EU countries, in order to scrape a living, to send the money back home in order to improve their families' lives. When the Labour contractor that supplied the work to the chicken plant reneged on a small raise it had promised its long-time employees, cutting their earnings by 10%, Kelso was righteously indignant. In the span of one weekend, he organised his co-workers to carry out a work stoppage. When they arrived at the plant on Monday, dozens of people refused to enter the processing lines to work, demanding a reinstatement of their wages. So here you have a man who would help get the labour force together and protest essentially and strike in order to get the wages promised to them, and that's an incredible feat from a man. Honestly, because there are many people who would just suck it up and deal with it, but here you've got a guy who fought not just for his rights but the rights of his fellow colleagues as well, and that is a man to be commended. Their actions attracted the attention of the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, and by year's end, workers at the chicken plant had won a union contract. In addition to securing better pay and working conditions, the contract and its subsequent renegotiations gradually phased out the third-party labour contractor altogether. As a result, eventually Kelso and many others were hired directly by the chicken plant, granting them hard-fought union protections and a slightly improved quality of life. So their lives wouldn't have improved dramatically, but at the same time, it's a massive step going from living conditions from say 1 to 2, and essentially, he got better working conditions, or not he was a key part of it, but they got better working conditions, they got unionization, and that's the main thing. Getting unionization can play such a key part in improving your working conditions. So here you can see the incredible feat of not just him but his fellow workers, within the poultry plant. And so in recent years, Kelso lived alone in a one-room apartment. Though I had moved away, I visited him in 2014 to read him sections of my draft book, manuscript about Mississippi poultry workers, for which he was tickled to provide feedback. I found a decade-old 4x6 picture of us tacked upon his wall, so you can tell his friendship with her meant a lot. I visited him again in 2016 to gift him a copy of the book. He always received me graciously despite having just returned from a long day at work. Our time was short but precious. So Kelso's son, Daniel, who also works at the chicken plant, generously called to tell me of his passing. When he went to his father's apartment, he found my book, some letters, and the photo. He would have wanted you to know, he said. And I thanked him, telling him I esteemed for his kindness, his generosity, his moral compass, and his leadership. Daniel also told me that the hospital in Jackson, where he also spent his last few days, is full of COVID and positive poultry workers. See all these people a doctor had asked rhetorically when the family visited, they're all from the chicken plant. So we can see is that this guy who, if he were still alive, he'd still be fighting for the rights of poultry workers to get maybe protective equipment or more spacing within work, or just to make their lives slightly better, because we can see that if people catch coronavirus wherever they are, working in such confined conditions, it will spread out to wider society. And so here we have a man who fought for his rights and the rights of others. Just days before Kelso passed away, President Trump invoked the Defense Protection Act to ensure that plants remain open despite the hazard they present to humans. And we'll get to Trump in a few minutes. This will dramatically hamper the efforts of local and state health officials to slow the spread of the deadly disease. So Trump's philosophy is that, look, we have to keep these plants open in order to keep food within the shops and stuff like that. But he didn't take into account how dangerous it is to stay in these places, and how the coronavirus could go into the food, and you can have a second level side effect of keeping these places open without them being safe. Because of the pandemic, Kelso's family cannot commemorate his life, which is a sad effect of the coronavirus, where you can't go to funerals, or funerals are extremely limited. Instead, they placed his framed photo and a vase of flowers on a table in the yard, inviting their community to stop by and pay their last respects in solitude. And so, we can see, look, Kelso's wish was to return to Mexico, and his family is doing all they can to raise $8,000 needed to send his body home. Meanwhile, Daniel's kidney disease has worsened, and he desperately needs a transplant to survive. But determined to do right by his father, Daniel is now preparing to spend the money he had saved for his own medical treatment on Kelso's repatriation. Celso Mendoza's life mattered. Daniel Mendoza's life mattered. Poultry and meatpacking workers' lives matter, and if we value all lives, we must take action to protect all lives, including those of the mostly black and brown, hard-working people who keep America's food chain running. To support Kelso's family in this difficult time, please consider giving to his and Daniel's repatriation fund. And so I don't know if this is still open. So this is still open. So what I'll do is I'll link this below. And if you wish to donate, if you have the money to donate, please do so. And finally, we go to Don the Con. So Trump has announced executive order suspending regulations impeding the U.S. economy. So that will link into him invoking the Defense Act. In order to, for him thinking that this will help boost the economy. So what he's doing is saying that they're going to cut a lot of regulation in order to help these businesses, and what that's going to do is make their second wave far worse, purely because they're not going to be given PPE, because any safe regulations, any regulations that would help workers are going to be gutted by these agencies and these companies. And so Trump, you're a massive tool, and I hope they vote you out in December, in November even. But yeah, we can see stuff like this, reasons why people like Celso Mendoza was fighting for. And so look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Shouts out to Angela Stuesse, if that's how you really pronounce your name. Hopefully it is. And shouts out to all the Celso Mendozas in the world fighting for not just their own rights, but the rights of other people. You're real heroes, and I have a lot of respect for you. So I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.